Um, yeah, thanks, Andrew, for asking me. I must admit, when Andrew first asked me to share, I was kind of excited because I love meeting other Christians here in Perth and just hearing what God's doing in your lives and seeing everyone get excited, about seeing God move. Also slightly nervous. I was the kid who never stuck their hand up in school to say anything. And so to stand here on stage is kind of a fun experience. Also, I used to work with Andrew at Young Adults, but literally we had our prayer meeting just before this with the setup crew, and that's larger than our Young Adults group. And I thought, this is just the setup crew and people who are on worship team. But it's nice to be here. And yeah, as I was thinking and praying, asking God, what can I share? I just kind of felt, well, it's about sharing. You guys have been looking for the last month about sharing your story and how your story has value. And God just started reminding me of sort of my own story, the things that he's been teaching me over the last few years, about sharing who he is and just who he is, and me being just amazed by that. So I thought I would just go through some of my stories, and hopefully that will encourage you if you think, what am I supposed to do? How can I actually talk to people about what I believe, what I do on Sundays, and to really, I guess be encouraged to really go deeper with what God's been showing you and actually be excited about it and see God move. Part of my story, I grew up in a Christian home, so went to church, and at one point kind of had the opportunity to say, what my parents have been teaching me about God, I believe that's true. So in that sense, I said, Jesus, I want to follow you. But it was all I knew. At some point, probably during high school, I realized, my friends don't all believe the same thing. A lot of them don't go to church. Some of them are Buddhist. Some of them have other religions, and we can't all be right. So I kind of had to think and question, okay, well, how do I know that Christianity really is right? And went through this process of really asking questions like, how do I know the Bible is true? And what are the implications if God exists or God doesn't exist, or who has the truth about what God is like? But I kind of got to the point of saying, no, the Christian God, what I know, like that matches up with what I see of the world around me. And through all of this, I had church friends that I could talk to, ask these questions for, and I was really appreciative of that. And then, it was just this process of being in a safe space of actually, how do I know this is true, and having people there. And so even in that, sort of realizing God was shaping my story already and having people around me where I could be free to ask these questions. Even more so as I started uni and started working, met even more people. I had friends who I really could have questions with about this aspect of the Bible, or, questions about, okay, how do we explain suffering? That's one that I know this year has been on the minds of a lot of people. Or what is our response to people who are sick? And why would God do that to innocent people? And really not being afraid to ask those questions. And I feel like, God was saying, even before I start having those conversations with other people as well, the church, really, people who share that faith, we have this safe space. Here I know from working with Andrew and from briefly talking to a few of you, this is a good space where we can actually explore and work out what is our story, what do we believe, who is God, and then from there, it's like, now I can have those conversations with other people. I remember one day we were door knocking in Bentley and Wilson, so not too far from here. And we were doing a community survey, asking people if they wanted a free Bible at the end of it. So my friend and I turned up at this door. We knocked on one guy's house, explained who we were, and then at the end we said, would you like a Bible? And his first response was, like, why would you do that? Like, why are you going around handing out free Bibles? Most people, when we door knock, would just politely say no and shut the door. But this was the first time that we'd been asked so bluntly, like, well, why do you do this? And it was in that moment I was like, this is a good question. Why am I here? Why do I believe that it's helpful for him to have this Bible? And so, it was, well, we believe that it's God's way of speaking to people, and it contains truth, and it helps us understand who he is, kind of thing. It turns out he was a Roman Catholic. So he then invited us in and started talking, asking questions. We met up with him a couple more times, and it was really good. A lot of it was just sitting there and listening to him as he processed his thoughts on religion and on God. But he did get to a point where one day he sat down, and I remember thinking, wow, he actually thinks through this really clearly. And he says, yeah, I kind of wonder if I haven't made room for God in my life. He had just such a boxed idea of what religion was. And mostly all we'd done was go up and knock at his door and say, hi, would you like a Bible? And just being open to what God would say. Mostly, a lot of the conversations that I have would be with friends, family, and that's sometimes it's a little easier. Sometimes it's nice to know you're going to a stranger and we're going to have a 5-minute conversation or a half-hour conversation. Some people are really open, so we do this every week. We'll go out into Perth, talk to people, find out how they're doing, and say, we're Christians, we believe God loves you, can we pray for you? And sometimes people will really sit and share their stories, and it's really incredible. I think you guys have already learned 1 week about just asking questions, finding where people are at, and finding that connection between who God is and how we can really bless and encourage them. And yeah, sometimes really it's all about sitting and listening. And I guess in that sense, it's once we are spending time knowing who God is for us, it's then, okay, God, would you give me your heart for people, whether it's a stranger on the street or whether it's these friends that we've known for ages. It's waking up every day with that intention of, God, how do you see them? And in this interaction, as I go out, as I care for them, as I ask them how their day is, am I leaving that door open for them to come to me when time is stressful or they're going through a hard time? And I think one thing that also helps is just praying for them. I remember being in church one day and we sang a song, "How great is our God, come sing with me, how great is our God." And I just had this picture of some of my friends who aren't Christians being able to come and join me in that, for them to be here in the service, worshiping God, knowing the same joy that we know as we know God. And so then I really felt committed to, okay, I'm going to pray for them. And I'd pray for them. One of them visited me. We shared coffee together. And then I know Andrew likes his coffee. I have a manual coffee grinder. And so while the water's boiling, my housemates laugh, but I'll stand there for 45 seconds grinding my coffee. But then after that conversation, I'd say, because my friend's not a Christian, and we had a conversation about this coffee grinder every morning while I was grinding my coffee, I would just remember to pray for her, and just say, okay, God, like what can you, would you reveal yourself to her in a certain way? She lives in Canada, so it's different. I can't necessarily see her. But over COVID, that actually helped because they were working from home. Everyone had lots of time, and so we actually got to have phone calls and video calls. And so I ended up talking to 2 of those friends that I'd been praying for through that song and my friend I was praying for while I was grinding coffee. And out of the blue, they both know I'm Christian. But one of them, we ended up having 2 4-hour conversations, and she was the one asking me questions, what does the Bible say about God and the Trinity? And was Jesus just a teacher? Was he God? Was he man? Kind of thing. And I was really surprised. I've known them for years. I've been praying for them on and off over these years. Had a few conversations there and then, but didn't, like here and there, but didn't feel like it was necessarily the right time to just launch into something. But just by continually investing, continually praying, I found myself having this 4-hour conversation where my friend was asking me questions about God. And I thought, and then, even in preparing for this message, I just realized, oh, these are 2 of the friends that I've been praying for over the last 10 years, that God would give opportunity for me to actually say something even while we're in different countries and just show up in their life. So I think getting God's heart for people, praying for them, just investing in their lives. Even another story is that one day I realized most of my good friends are from church. How many actual non-Christians do I see on a regular basis? And how am I supposed to share with people if my entire world really is full of Christians? And so a friend invited me along to a community choir. I went there, and someone there invited me along to these dinners. So I turned up, happy to meet people. And it turns out now there's a group, many of them are Muslim, some are atheist, some of them are sort of nominal Jews. And we just started hanging out every month, going to a different restaurant for dinner. And through that, even now, earlier this year, they're all in Melbourne. But one of them said, actually, I'm part of this group. It's a group of different people, different religions, but we all talk about our faith journeys. And you seem like someone who would be interested in that. We're like, do you want to join? So I said, sure. And then over the course of the last few months, have had really interesting conversations, just finding out where people are at, but also being able to put forth like a Christian perspective of, oh yeah, this is what prayer means. What does it mean for you guys? And just really good discussion, finding out, what their beliefs are, being able to actually talk about why we believe the Bible is true, and I guess even hear what they think Christianity is about. And then to tell them what actually the real life about being a Christian is. For a lot of people, it might be Christians, they go to church and they have a long list of, you can't do this, and you can't do this, and you should do that. And it's super solemn. And they've never stepped into a church. They've never done worship or seen worship like this, like we do here. And for them to then hear my experience of, I read the Bible every day, or I spend time praying for different friends, for different family. For them, we might take it for granted that that's what Christian life is about. But for them, it was really interesting. And they said, that's the first time I've heard a Christian actually explain that's how they live daily life. And I didn't know that, and I wouldn't necessarily have thought to have said that with them. But again, just even thinking in COVID times, we haven't been able to meet up. They're in Melbourne, so things have been worse for them over there. I feel like it's almost back to normal here, and we're pretty blessed. But again, just making the most of those little opportunities. People have been asking questions. Again, praying for them as well. And through it all, I think just something that God really said was, you've been hearing about this is the importance of telling your story, and God just wanting to invite us in to hear, can we write our story together? One of the first times, actually, I realized I asked myself, why am I different to if I wasn't a Christian? I was actually, now that we've prayed about exams, at the end of high school, talking to my friends. We were all kind of concerned, studying really hard, and I realized, because I know who God is, I study hard, but I have this peace of going into the exam knowing that really it's not the end of the world. My value isn't in the grades that I get, or the uni course that I get into, or how much I'll make when I start working. And all of that can come, and it's great, but even if I lost all of that, I can't lose God's love for me. I can't lose that relationship, and I know that He's there beside me It's not just all dependent on my effort. And that was one of the first things that I realized, that that's probably a big difference. And if I wasn't a Christian, I'd have a lot more fear, a lot more stress, a lot more anxiety. But I know, that God is doing life with me. And so it can look like different things. And that's, one little story that I could share with my friends if they asked. Now it can be sort of different things that what I see God do in the lives of my housemates, and even just sharing that. It doesn't have to be a massive present the gospel and lead someone to Jesus. It's often in the little stories that that God has that opportunity, and people will listen. People will watch how we act if they know we're a Christian, and it will intrigue them. Why do you act the way you do at work? Why are you so honest or so kind or loving? And I find that as we represent God in the day-to-day and just ask God, you don't just care about me turning up on Sunday. God actually has an opinion on work or how we do relationships, how we communicate. And I think once I got that aspect of, wow, God's interested in my whole life. He's not interested in just me doing stuff for him, but he just wants to be with me. And in that, as I spend time with him, as I hear who he is, as I see him move in the lives of myself and my friends, I get excited and it naturally wants to come out. Like, how was your day? I saw this thing happen. Or one thing that happened recently, I got to share with people was, I was trusting God to pay for my staff fees with being in YWAM. And I got some money in. So I worked out how much I needed to pay for that month, and it was to the dollar exactly how much I needed to pay off for that month. And I was like, wow, God knew that. And so he gave in the exact amount, like a day or two before I needed to pay it in. And so it wasn't a massive thing, but, it's in all of these little stories that is really that pursuit of God in our lives. And I remember one time, one of my leaders said, one of the things is, how much do you want it? Want God. And at that point, I had seen people who were excited about God's work in their life, but I didn't necessarily feel that. I didn't experience that, but I saw that. And I said, I don't know, but I see how they live. And I want that. I want to be there. And I think just realizing that, God doesn't have this scorecard of, have you read your Bible? Tick. Have you shared with someone or offered to pray with them? Tick. But actually, really, it all comes down to, hey, do you want to spend time with me? I love you so much. Will you get to know me? Will you let me get to know you? And out of that come all of these random little moments of doing life with God that then we can share with people. As we get to know God and as we involve him in our lives, then we will go out and say, actually, I'm not nervous about meeting this person because I'm looking past that and seeing how God sees that. Whether it's my friend and I can ask them how they're going, or whether it's a homeless person on the street and I might not feel like I know what to say, but hey, I can say, hi, how's your day going? And sit and listen to their story. And just in that, I guess my invitation to you guys is just to ask yourselves, what is God doing in your lives? What are the small stories? And really, are you keen to really see and say, God, I want to spend every day with you. I want to be intentional about seeing who people are in your eyes, not with my own filter, but being open to those opportunities, and then just seeing God move in random ways. I think, it doesn't always happen instantly. I've been friends with some of these people for years before we opened up, but sometimes it happens faster, and we'll meet people on the street and they'll say, wow, no one's actually told me that someone loves me. or no one stopped to pay attention to me before. Or it might be that friend that I've known for 10 years who suddenly says, well, what do you think as a Christian? Like, what should my perspective be? Or what should I do in this situation? God's creative. I was talking to Jeremy about even COVID and people being creative about how we do school or training or church even. And I think, just be open to how God can use you in how you share your story. There's no cookie cutter format. He uses your personality, he uses your friends, he uses your interests, whether it's randomly choir like me or sports, or movies, just different ways. Just ask God and be excited about that. Anyway, I think that is about the time that Andrew said I had. But I mean, this is about you guys also learning to share your story. So I hear you guys can break into small groups and sort of share, I guess, in your tables, just share with each other maybe either, one thing that you feel like God's been teaching you, that you'd then be able to share with other people. Or maybe even for me, before that, it was asking God to actually show me my story and like why I believe what I do, and maybe even just questions that you might have about, I'd like to look into this deeper. We might be scared sometimes that what if people think, I'm not a good Christian for asking this question. But I think I found that as I had that conversation with my friends, as we started actually talking about it, other people had those same questions, and it really helps us to then be able to share that with people who don't know God yet.